Maryland and Charlotte's the game that we had this week. Real quick, let's hit on it. Charlotte jumps out to the 14-0 lead, and we're looking at each other saying, what's going on right now? Now, Biff Poggi, we talked about it during the game, injected confidence, injected energy into his kids, that DMV connection. Most of them who either played at St. Francis or transferred in from Michigan or transferred in from Maryland or other Power 5 school, they weren't afraid. They weren't concerned. They just went out there and they played with their hair on fire. And that first offensive possession was amazing. That pick six right off the bat was incredible. But credit Maryland, something we hit on pretty extensively down the stretch. Credit them for the way that they just kept their composure. Talia Tungavailoa didn't get too high, didn't get too low. Threw a couple interceptions, bounced right back. But your overall thoughts as we saw Maryland end up cruising to a 38-20 win?
Yeah, so a couple things. First of all, from the Maryland perspective, and if Maryland fans are having questions, after week 2, I would say this first and foremost. Charlotte is a much better football team than anybody realized. And I think, anybody that watched our game got to see that. I mean, that's a legitimate Power 5 level defense that they have. And so for 3 quarters, they played Maryland even and then ultimately just got, I think they ran out of gas. They didn't have the depth. They didn't have the strength. But they're a good football team, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. I think the other thing, and you hit on it, Talia didn't have his best game. Both of his interceptions, one, he got fooled by the coverage. The other, he didn't put the ball in the right place. But the coaches talked to us, and he talked to us about being able to get back to neutral. No matter what's happening, get to that place of neutral. And he did that. He kept his composure. He didn't panic. Locks didn't panic. The team didn't panic when they were down 14-0. And they kind of just grinded it out until they took control of the game in the fourth quarter. And I was very impressed with Roman Hemby. We knew he was going to get the ball more and be a bigger part of their offense. And they really leaned on him and their running game down the stretch. And I think it was a good win. I think it was a really good win because it wasn't easy and it wasn't pretty, particularly in the first half. But they found a way to win, and they end up winning, pretty comfortably in the fourth quarter. So, it was a good step. I was impressed with Maryland's defense, too. I think that their defense is solid. And the biggest question still going forward, if you talk about Maryland trying to take that next step to beat an Ohio State, to beat a Michigan, to beat a Penn State, the offensive line, how good can they be? How much more can they gel? They've had some guys injured, so their depth is a question there, too. So that, to me, is the big key. I think everywhere else that I look at that team, they match up pretty well.
No doubt. Real quick, again, just giving flowers to Charlotte. They were picked last in the AAC this year.
Yeah.
Biff was adamant at Media Day that was a mistake. And when you talk to him, you can tell how much he loves these kids and how much those kids love him. And you could feel that on the field as well. But it didn't look like a team that's going to finish last in the American. No. I think we can say that pretty confidently.
Yeah, and the other thing that was impressive to me, because I think both of us anticipated with so many players from that area and 6 players on the team that transferred from Maryland, that the emotions would maybe get the best of them. We might see some silly penalties or whatever. None of that. I mean, they played with great composure. They just didn't have quite enough. So the key for them is going to be staying healthy here over the next few weeks. They've got Georgia State at home, and then they have to go down to Gainesville to play Florida before they get into their conference schedule. So, they were down a couple defensive linemen when we saw them on Saturday night. And so, staying healthy is going to be really important because their first 11 guys on both sides of the ball are pretty good.
Absolutely. Maryland's next game, they've got Virginia at home on Friday.